most of us like to assume that we have everything together. That we know what we're talking about, we know what we're doing, we have certain ways of doing things that are really grand and work for us, and they're the best way of doing things that there, ever was or ever could be. And this is a common psychological bias called modal bias. We like things to be done our way, okay? Which is why I remember having a conversation with a coworker back when I was working at P&G. We were actually on business travel. We were going to a meeting, and it was an overnight trip, and I didn't need to pack much. And so I brought, instead of like the standard rolling, suitcase, I just had a little like shoulder bag that had, a change of clothes and my computer and my shoes and pretty much everything I needed. And it was fine. It wasn't heavy, whatever.
Right.
And my coworker thought it was absolutely absurd that, and I have no idea why this is such a big deal, but absolutely absurd that, I just did to carry a rolling suitcase. And, it's much better to carry a rolling suitcase, and it'd be more comfortable, and there'd be less weight, and all this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, it really doesn't matter that much. And I kind of like my little shoulder bag because it's smaller. And so it's a simple explanation of modal bias. This person liked to do things in a certain way.
Right.
And because I was not doing this thing in a certain way, then it was less good than the way that they were doing it.
Oh, totally.
Like
my mom is the queen of shortcuts.
Yeah.
And she's really good at it. I mean, she the queen of shortcuts. But no matter what your reason for driving a certain way, whether like you're not in a hurry and it's prettier or whatever, if you don't drive the shortest way, I mean, she's a really nice lady, but she's like, that's ridiculous. And she'll give you a rundown for 5 minutes about why you should do it this way and how it would save you so much time and blah, 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 blah. So I think that's another good example.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because other people, particularly, this is a big thing with people in authority, of the way that I do it or would tend to do it is the best way, and therefore the team should use this way.
Right.
And, it's very often in the absence of data,
right.
you just do it.
It's just the best because you do it.
Yeah, the big boss's way, because that's the way that you do it. I think Avinash Kashik in Web Analytics, the Web Analytics book, talks about, I'm trying to remember the exact phrase that he uses, but it's basically modal bias. It's like in the absence of data, you do it the boss's way. Because modal bias ensures that the bosses thinks that their way is the best way unless you have something to actually bring to the table and prove otherwise.
Wow.
It's also important to understand if you're a manager or a leader or whatever, you suffer from modal bias too. We all do.
Yeah.
And, parts of the value of understanding cognitive bias is that we're not immune to things either. And just knowing about it isn't necessarily proof against it.
Right.
So, there are a lot of things like, we're going through the preparation in getting my book ready to launch right now. And I definitely have opinions on how things should go, what should, happen, what the cover of the book should look like, how we should go about the launch, who we should send review copies to, all of those things. And my input is important, but my input is not the be all and the end all of the process, because I'm working with a ton of very smart, intelligent people who have done this hundreds or thousands of times. And just because I think something might be the right way does not mean it is the right way. So, this is the whole thing of keep an open mind, which is difficult sometimes. Yeah. And, it's always in situations like this, I personally find it helpful to remind myself that for however long I've been doing this or however much experience that I have, that doesn't mean that other people don't have good ideas or don't have, things that they could suggest to make other things better.
Absolutely.
And actually removing yourself a little bit and saying, I want to look at this thing for how valuable it is instead of prejudging it as,
because it's not mine.
Yeah. It's a lot of companies, have this, this happens a lot in technology where, it wasn't made here syndrome.
Oh, sure.
It's like just because a technology, this originated with a lot of the big technology companies like IBM. If IBM didn't develop it, it's really not that good. And so, they would prefer to use something that was developed internally, even if there was an external tool that would actually be much better.
Yeah. So for you, just knowing these kind of concepts help you inhibit yourself from just automatically jumping into that assumption, which is the whole reason you use it.
And that's the thing, we're never going to be fully immune. Even after knowing it. But knowing about it lets you, as you said, inhibit. Yeah. That's the only thing that you can do. You can prevent this automatic response that many of us tend to have. You can halt that just enough to actually examine it. And by doing that, you can actually see which one of your options is better. That is modal bias.